Aaron, welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well. Summer is almost
Excellent.
starting, so the sun is shining, right?
Yeah, exactly. The sun is shining. What part of the world? You're a global traveler, so where the heck are you right now?
At this moment, I'm in Poland, where our software delivery center is, and getting ready to travel to the Netherlands for the Health Conference Europe. So yeah, my bags are packed again.
I feel like you spend more time in the air than you do on the ground.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. But like I said, summer is coming, so I'm hoping for some good time in the holidays to a little bit have a rest. Huh?
Gotcha, gotcha. It's much needed. Well, thank you for joining us. I guess today what we're going to talk about is a very interesting shift in the landscape when you look at the medical device industry, especially on the regulatory side. We all know the FDA is the governing body, and it takes time to get things through the FDA times. And recently, because of the changes in policy on the government side, there's been a significant reduction in the number of individuals that work in the FDA, and that's causing a significant delay in getting products to market. Investors make huge bets on companies, and I think there's a lot of strain on the investor side as well. There's strain on the company side. There's obviously resourcing that's needed to bring products to market. We have so much uncertainty in the delivery of the end product because of a shifting landscape in the FDA. It creates a significant conundrum in the environment. I feel like you've got a very unique proposition for the industry on a global level because of the company that you've built and developed, the kind of flexibility you offer to companies, and ultimately you provide a lifeline for companies to be able to come to market in spite of all the turbulence in the marketplace on the FDA side. So, having said that, before we get too deep into the FDA and the environment, perhaps Barend, you could give a quick introduction of what is Thaumatec.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, so my name Barend Smet. I'm president and co-founder of the Thaumatec Tech Group. Thaumatec Tech Group is a health tech software house. And we support companies with their health tech innovation. And we do that by providing innovation consulting and software development services. So we really focus on the software side of things. And we help the companies develop the software for their medical devices or their digital health solutions. We work according to the highest quality standards. So if you look at our quality management system, it's certified with ISO for medical devices. So 13485, well known by everybody, I think. And of course, we're working according to the EU MDR and the FDA regulations for medical devices. So we have quite some experience from the regulatory part, what that means in the EU, but as well as in the US. If you look at a little bit like, what is it that we're covering? So we cover the whole Internet of Medical Things. So the technology stack there from chip to cloud. So we know how to build complex systems and get them certified. If you look at what have we done, we've started in 2014. We have locations in the Netherlands, and as mentioned before, our main delivery center is in Poland, where we have close to 100 software engineers, and we've worked on numerous medically certified products, including some class 3 medical devices under MDR and FDA. So I think with our customer base from Western Europe and in the US, we really gained a very deep, I would say, industry expertise, but as well as also the specifics on the regulatory part in Western Europe and the US. So yeah, I would love to share how, is our offering enabling companies to, maximum use the resources that they have to get the devices into the market, right? Because that's what we want to do, get these innovations into the market so they can really have an impact on people's health.
No, absolutely. And when you say you're obviously a global company, your customer base in the US is growing and expanding. If you look at your revenue streams overall, where do you see your segmentation? Is it 10%, 20%, 30% US, 30% Europe? Like, how do you weigh that out?
It depends a little bit because we're working very much on a project basis. So I would say the US is between 20 to 30% of our business. So we're quite well established in the Bay Area and Boston. and we're actually now very much expanding also in the, I would say, Texas region and the Minneapolis region. So we focus on certain hubs, of course, Bay Area, and then Los Angeles, San Diego, also very, very interesting hubs for us to see that, our experiences from previous projects can help, future companies as well. So we have a very good focus on the US, and we looking to grow there to about 40 to 50% of our total business. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I think this growth is definitely going to occur um, more easily because of the current environment. Let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into the current environment. So personally, I've been working with medical devices for quite some time, and I know that a lot of companies that were expecting to get clearance have been delayed significantly. And if you look at the stats, I believe the stats are pretty alarming in that approvals are dropping to a 10-year low, which is significant because of the FDA's drop in workforce by almost 20%.
Yep.
20% might not seem like a lot, but given the length and duration and complexity of getting an FDA approved device, it's not an easy task. I know many companies that have been expecting their clearance to occur very, very shortly have been summarily told that they're going to expect delays of 9 to 10 months
Mhm.
because either somebody has been laid off or has taken a leave of package. So it's not the um, best of times, and companies are now having to figure out how do you balance this. How do you balance all these changes in the industry when you've got a significant amount of billable hours, workforce, tailored towards building and launching a product that suddenly now will not be launched for about 9 months. So what do you do with that manpower that you basically built? You have a lot of in-house knowledge that you basically created as well. So you can't just summarily like let go of people because there's a significant trove of knowledge that every worker has, and companies are having to definitely deal with this. So maybe we kind of jump into a little bit about, how does Thaumatec play a role in helping companies deal with this sort of contagion of of unstableness or unevenness in the marketplace?
I mean, it's well said, and I would like to add, it's not only the delays that are affecting companies; it's also the impact it has on the feedback the FDA can give on your submissions. There was always a lot of interaction between the FDA and companies to help them with their submissions, and there's a lot of loss of know-how. So it's not only a capacity thing, it's also, I think, know-how that is lost for the short term, but also for the long term. The institutional know-how, a lot of seniors also got laid off. So I think that will also put a lot more stress on the companies to make sure that they fill the gap instead of having a good partner like the FDA to help them with that. So I just wanted to add that a little bit, that I think the impact might be even bigger than just, I would say, just a delay. It can be much bigger. So if you look at that, then I would say it's crucial for companies to focus on a couple of things. I mean, first of all, cost. Yes, of course. Everybody says, we're focusing on cost. But I would like to say really, really go deep into every structure of your business. Where are the costs coming from? And is it still the most optimal, way you've been organizing? Because things have changed. You might have made decisions a couple of years ago based on the information that was available then. I would say, really review all these different cost positions and see if there's not any alternatives that are a better solution for you. So that's one, the refocusing on cost, but really from a strategic point of view. Second, I think super crucial, flexibility. Yeah, you have to focus much more on the flexibility on dealing with uncertainties. And that's not only delays of saying, okay, we have delays, we might want to reduce a certain workforce for a certain time and then scale up again. It might be the other way around. There might be a window of opportunity that you say, we need to get that submission in because now there's a window of an opportunity. So you want to maybe accelerate. So flexibility for me, I think, is also crucial for companies to focus on, instead of saying, let's build a team, have a stable team, go in a stable process, and everything is predictable. Now, I think you have to really see um, how you can build flexibility in upscaling and downscaling into your business model. And the third one is expertise. One time right. I just mentioned that the loss of expertise on the FDA side is huge. It will have a short term, but also midterm impact. So really think, where can I get the proper up to date expertise if it's inside my company or outside the company, so I can do it one time right. I don't have time to have the learning curve of learning as you're doing, because that's costing money, that's costing time that you will not have. And I would say the last point is, in the whole reshuffling that you do, how can you still be in control of that process? And all that is wrapped up in a discussion that we have with our customers, saying, okay, let's talk about strategically outsourcing part of your innovation and part of your software development. Yeah. And I really stress on strategically, meaning this is different for every company. This is different for every company. Where do you want to focus on? Which are your strengths? Where do you have your weaknesses? Where do you want to be flexible? How can you optimize your cost structures in a way that you get a strategical advantage on cost, flexibilities, expertise, but still be in control? And I think we can dive into a little bit more. What would that be? But I think that's the main discussions that we currently having when we talk to our customers, saying, "Hey, how do we deal with this uncertainty?"
Yeah, no, you have a really good point, Barend. I mean, on the FDA side, the loss of knowledge, that is almost an incalculable damage because there's such a deep level expertise needed for every vertical of medical device. And they come in so many different forms and factors, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's orthopedic. There's so much knowledge discipline, so much knowledge contained, and then loss of that knowledge on the FDA side, it will potentially have a crippling effect that needs companies to really consider how are they actually deploying and employing people and building that knowledge base within their company so that they can go back and forth with the ebbs and flows of the FDA. Maybe we can spend some time just talking about what some of the like an example potentially of how do you come into a company and help them strategically create a workforce. Because I think that's true. It's part of it is knowledge and timing. So a medical device company has a certain amount of knowledge. You don't want to lose that. You want to keep that in house. But you have a very interesting model that allows companies to leverage your expertise to keep that knowledge as part of that ecosystem and not lose it. And I think you offer flexibility in terms of being able to offer individuals and engineers at a time that's needed to scale up or scale in as needed. But I think more importantly, I think companies might need to know is how do you help contain the knowledge in the ecosystem? Because I think the loss of knowledge is probably just as crippling it is on the FDA side, is equally crippling on the medical device side, the manufacturer side, the developer side. So maybe just to introduce Thaumatec, like walk us through a real world example if you could. I know you have many of them, but if you could just pick one maybe and kind of walk us through how does this work?
Well, it starts with, of course, in the end, it begins with what kind of innovation does a company want to do? Yeah, and say argument they want to upgrade their current medical device, want to make it a connected device. Yeah, was a standalone device. They want to upgrade it to a medical device, so they want to make and include a connectivity and a platform and an interaction with data gathering and do something with that data. If I would talk to that company, then I'm pretty sure they will have a lot of the expertise on the device software side. And there I would just say, okay, what we can do there is very easily, if you need to scale up, have really good engineers that can work in your team to add your capacity. But the ownership of all the know-how and what needs to be done is something that you figured out already for 20, 30 years. So that will be just a pure capacity increasement that, would allow you to increase, but also decrease, in a very flexible way with very competent people who have worked on medical devices before. If you then go, for instance, to the other area, so the connectivity and then the platform, this customer might not have the experience, but would like to get it. So then we would say, okay, we would take the responsibility to start building this platform, but in parallel, we'll make it very transparent in our documentation, how we do, the architecture of it, what are the components, how do we do the estimation, what is the work to be done, and we will allow a customer to, as we go along, to introduce his or her engineers that will then become part of our team. And the thing that I think is very crucial in any of our corporations is that we very much focus on the proper documentation of what all our guys and our girls are doing. And I cannot stress that enough, that that's a little bit of difference maybe between people working in my company or our company and working at the customer's company, the engineers working for a software company, service company, they are very used to rigid documentation requirements. They will have to register all their hours, justify what they've done, document that in a proper way, because that's what we're getting paid for. Often we see on the customer side, the documentation, all that stuff is a little bit, it's not everybody's favorite. So we can see that exactly focusing on that side and having full transparency and access to that for the customer will give this on one side, the expertise and the know-how that we've built up is all getting, integrated in that. Secondly, the customer can follow it on a day-to-day basis and learn from that and get its own engineers introduced in that. And when you then say, and now we need to downscale, we need to kind of like slow down a little bit, reduce the team, all the know-how is in the systems, is in the documentation, and not in the people's head. We see often that people want to introduce flexibility, they want to reduce costs, they start working with freelancers, remote, and that can work great until they want to reduce, the freelancer goes away, then they need to increase again, and then they have a super high inefficiency cost because they have to restart again with new freelancers. There was no proper documentation. Their internal workforce wasn't focused on that. And that's, I think, where the model really works and strengthens each other. Because focusing on that documentation, on the proper architecture, making that transparent, that's what we're getting paid for. That's our business model. So that works quite nice with our customers, and they start to feel very comfortable with that.
What's fascinating is you can plug and play. If a company needs a certain resource, you can bring it forward. Or if a company needs to build an entire platform, they can come to you and you can basically build it for them in concert with some of their engineers as needed. When you talk about the idea of scaling up and scaling down, is there a way we can put a monetary amount around that? Like, what is the efficiency gain for a company, for our audience? Because for those who are not familiar with medical devices, they might not realize, what does this account for? Like, if you take a real world example of a company who raises, let's say, $4 to $5 or $10 million, what kind of a cost saving could they see with you with your participation, shall we say? And I think the cost saving comes from two perspectives, right? One perspective is potentially looking at labor costs, obviously. The second perspective is simply the ability to toggle up and toggle down resources as needed. And it's perhaps difficult to quantify what the toggling effect might be, but is there a quantification you can provide for our viewers as to what are you actually helping a company save from a monetary perspective?
A very, very, very good question. And like you said, there's many different layers to that. So let me start with the easiest one. The benefit of, I would say, labor costs between different regions, meaning, if you look at the US and you would look at Poland, you easily talk about, the direct effect of 30 to 40% cost reduction. Yeah. And I would put on top of that, and of course, this is all under the assumption that it's the same quality. Yeah. So that's why we always stress, we have the highest quality. Our QMS is, we have 3 ISO certificates, and we work on the most difficult software. So the quality, let's not go on that side. Really purely like for like. So it's 30-40% on the direct cost. Then I would say you have an indirect cost advantage, meaning scaling up. If a company scales up by themselves, it's not only, you have to have the resource, you have to have the recruitment, you have to have the selection, you have to find these people, you have to onboard these people, you have to get them into the those are all indirect costs that are on my side. And that's also what we're good at, because that's our daily business. So finding people or onboarding them on the project, our own people that we have, it's all, the first moment that persons go on the project, they start working on the project. So you don't lose these, I would say, overhead or indirect time. So that's another component. You could say 5 to 10%. Then I would say you have to deduct a little bit of an advantage of, you have a communication between different locations, maybe also different cultures. So that might lead, if you could argue, there's maybe some inefficiency of about 10% that you could deduct from that. And then I would say you could add, in certain circumstances, about 20% extra benefit. If we're talking, for instance, for platforms, we have some standard modules that we have pre-developed that we can use for projects if that fits. And that's more like you have to think, I want to build a platform. So I want to have organizational management in there. I want login. I want certain securities in there. I want to have certain minimum, architecture, infrastructure set up. We figured that out. We've seen that every time it's the same thing. So we built some standard blocks that we can utilize for our customers, and that would give them, give or take, some 20% extra. So if you look at that, and there's different variations, you very quickly can come to 30 to 50% reduction like for like. If you put the effort into it, where strategically do I want to apply this? Yeah, so it is substantial, and it definitely makes sense to investigate that. Yeah.
I mean, that's like 30 to 50%. That must be music to almost any medical device executive's ear. That's a significant cost reduction. There's probably two things that people are thinking about in this process. One is obviously, I'm not sure if a lot of companies work with Polish software firms. And I'm expressing my own ignorance, or maybe I'm suggesting the ignorance that perhaps exists in the general medical device industry. But I do know that obviously they've outsourced to India a lot and other countries. Poland doesn't seem to come on the geography as often. Am I accurate in my assessment of that? And if so, what are some of the reasons why they haven't come, or why isn't Poland on the map for a lot of companies right now?
It's a good question. I think it has to do a little bit with maybe geography, or maybe other regions being more active, maybe especially from historical point of view, if we talk about California. I do say it's interesting when you say, okay, 30 to 40%, it sounds almost like a done deal. What I want to say is that there's also been some very bad experiences with a lot of companies with using, I would say, remote working, nearshore, offshoring companies. It's not only about the cost. We all know that. In the end, you want to have something done. So I think why Poland is maybe not on the radar is Poland is very also focused on, of course, Europe. I mean, there's a lot of companies also active in the US, but maybe not as loud and prominent, available, present as maybe other regions. I'm not quite sure. But what makes the difference for us, and especially when we are talking to potential customers, is we're not a huge big software house that can do anything. Yeah, and saying like, okay, we do 10 to 20 different industries. We have 10,000 employees, because most of the time that's not a fit for the customers that we're working with. Our focus, for instance, on purely only health tech, MedTech, is, I think, a huge difference compared to the bigger offshoring, nearshoring companies and competitive advantage that we have. Given to the location, I think it's also a nice cultural fit. What we see in highly innovative, I would say, projects, is also very good that anybody working on that has the same culture, how to approach innovation, how to interact with each other, how to kind of like, have discussions to come to, a better end result. So that might also be something that I think is important to consider. But I know we have some work to do for promotion of our region.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest, hang up with a lot of folks going to external teams is not so much the cost per se, but the productivity and the timeline, the communication. And you've done this a few times. You basically harness an amazing team at Thaumatec. And I think it needs to be highlighted that you've actually cultivated a great culture that communicates very effectively with its US counterparts. And I can say that personally, I've obviously been a customer of yours as well for some of the products we have. And you've really built a team that communicates extremely effectively on a wavelength that everyone in the US can definitely take advantage of. So I want to, first of all, say the kudos to you for doing that. But maybe you can spend some time talking about the intention behind it, because it wasn't just something that happened by chance. I think you've been very intentional about building the team. So maybe talk a little bit about how you built the team, the kinds of people that you have on your team that assures a US company that when we communicate with Thaumatec, we get the same level of services you would get with any other US based software entity. So if you can spend some time on that, I think it's worth highlighting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Happy to do that. Yeah. Thank you for the question because it's one of my favorite topics. Yeah. So what we really build stress in our team and the people that join Thaumatec is that we focus on everybody individual, be accountable for what you do, take responsibility for your actions and be proactive. Yeah, if you see something, if you have a better idea, be proactive in expressing that. And this is why we always are encouraging when we have a team on our side and we have people on the customer side, everybody interacts. So we don't have a bottleneck of, for instance, one delivery manager or one project manager that handles everything and has the team. No, we would like the team, if it makes sense, to really interact with our customer directly. And that can even be that, we have some juniors that just coming from university and they will be communicating directly with the customer as well, because we think that's where the magic happens. Yeah. When you're talking about innovation, when you're talking about R&D, it's still a people's business. Even though a lot of things are digital, we're talking also via digital screen, but it's still the interaction that matters. And we think that if you have a whole team, it's a pity to reduce that interaction to one person being a project manager and delivery, because then you lose, or there's an interface between a whole team that has great ideas that might have different experiences, and you want to make sure that our customer can see that, can experience that, and can benefit from that. So this is what we do, and this is what we also nurture from the beginning. We have a nice program. We have our Health Tech Academy, where we work together with the local universities, and we have a summer program of 2 months where we get the best students from the local technical universities and we match them with very promising startups. In this case, last year we had 5 startups from Harvard Innovation Labs. This year we again have 4 startups from Harvard. Um, so when the interns then are interacting with these very promising and high prestige ambitious startups, that's already where it starts, and we're very comfortable with that. Of course, we help them with mentors and making sure that they learn from it and it's an internship, but we believe to nurture that from the earliest start. Interact with your customer, express your thoughts, your ideas, even disagreements, because that can only lead to a better product, especially in innovation. We think that's important. And that's what we want to do with every customer, to have that relationship in a very transparent and open way. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, the word magic, and it's truly, I think what you guys do is creating magic. And what I find really appealing is that your focus isn't really on just being an outsourced cost reduction center. You're actually driving innovation. And you can't do that unless it's done intentionally. So I think you've created a culture that drives innovation, that meets customer expectations at the highest level. Your transparency is incredible. And you do an amazing job of cataloging everything that you do, from the hours worked to the papers generated. It's almost like you have a trusted partner who's able to take you to the next level. So it sounds amazing. I think if you're speaking to all the CEOs out there who are medical device executives, it takes some planning to fully utilize the benefit of Thaumatec. So if, as an executive myself, when I build medical device teams or medical device applications, you have to really have a strategic understanding of how you're going to build a product to market, which is the IP, the software engineering team, whatever. Maybe there's a construction of thought that's needed to bring a team to market or product to market. I am assuming that CEOs now have to take a different perspective or an added perspective or added lens on how they might engage with Thaumatec and improve their efficiency. And I think it requires a rigorous thought process. If you were pitching to all the CEOs out there, how would you advise them to maybe not just rethink, but even to think in the first place when they start thinking about outlining a strategic roadmap? How would they place Thaumatec in that roadmap?
So if you look at the process, and this really hasn't changed over the years, but I agree with you. I think the timing now is even more. First of all, start with a simple conversation. The first conversations we have is our CTO, our architects are already involved, and you will tell us your idea, and we already start drafting, some architecture, some ideas. So already you get immediate value of, we're structuring that idea for you. And what we always like to say is it's okay to start small. Yeah, we'd rather start with a couple of people start small, and then we'll grow as fast as you're comfortable with, as fast as you need. But yes, it is change management, and we all know the most difficult thing is change management. Yeah, you cannot just introduce it with a big bang. I've seen it happening, big, outsourcing deals, big bang, and it took 3 to 4 years before that stabilized a little bit, and within that time, it was just chaos. So we rather say like, okay, let's start at the highest level in discussion, like what you want to reach, but especially what you want to build. How can we start with that? And let's start small, and then you will gain the confidence. And if then there's a need, then we will increase. But you need a little bit time for the change management of course, the CEOs themselves, but they will be pushing that idea to their organization. It's their organization that needs to adopt it. It's their organization that needs to be convinced that these engineers from this faraway country are actually competent and actually trustworthy, and they can work with them together, and they're actually people. Yeah. And that's the whole thing that I think you need to have some time to, I would say, let that grow. My experience, by the way, is when techies talk to techies, they very quickly, measure each other up and saying, okay, you know what you're talking about, so great, I can work with you. So that doesn't take too long. But I think for the process and everything to settle, and the interaction that you do and how to communicate, and are we making sure we understand each other? Start small. It's easier to grow than you start with a big bang and then you have to reduce. Most of the time, it doesn't happen. It's not our favorite way of starting. It sounds great, but the success for us is we have customers that have been with us for the 8 to 10 years already. We had a startup that from the Netherlands. They started very small. Now they have a class 2B medical device in the market. We've been working with them for eight years. At the height, we had a team of 15 people working for them. Currently, it's 4 people. They're thinking about a new upgrade, and it's not even discussion. Of course, they're going to do that with us, right? And so that's the relationship we want to have. Yeah? So start small, and then if everything feels right, upscaling is easier than downscaling.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're great at taking baby steps and building that relationship, and obviously you have some very long tenured customers that shows and reflects the level of trust companies have with you and your company. So it sounds like this type of a hybrid model um, of in-house and outsourced development with a co-partner is in some ways a strategic advantage that companies now need to think about. Um, is that the way you see it? Is that how you would pitch this to a potential medical device executive? Is that this is truly the next wave of development? It's no longer build it in-house. You need to leverage outskilled resources. Is that the direction things are going in?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not only about the uncertainties that we talked about, regarding FDA. It's also about the complexity. A lot of customers that we talk about, they have a medical device. They've been in the market for 20, 30 years, device working well. Now they need to go for an upgrade. If you need to go, with the newest technologies, Internet of Medical Things, there's a high complexity on building those solutions. Then there is all kind of new and updated regulations. Yeah, they also are not, like they were maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Then you will have all kind of cybersecurity challenges that are also increasing tremendously. So there's a lot of different know-how that you need to have and mobilize that is almost impossible for a company to have in-house unless you're one of the big companies. And even they struggle with some expertise that they say, we just don't have it, or we cannot, I would say, develop it fast enough so that it can keep up with all the developments in the market. And if everybody's talking about AI, but who's building it actually, and how good are these persons at it, and how fast? And this is where I think you need to look for partners. And that's not only us as a partner. There's also, for instance, I think, local, very good experts that, know exactly how to hand in your submission to the FDA with all the documentation produced, for instance, with companies with us. So I think you have to really look differently at the ecosystem around you, reevaluate all the suppliers and partners that you have, and think like, is this my ecosystem that is future proof on all the challenges that are going to be there? And now it was the FDA, technology, super big challenges still coming, cybersecurity and all these risks involved is the next one. and go on and go on. So I think if as a CEO for a medical device company or a digital health solution, you're not really actively managing and thinking about your ecosystem and which part is this piece of the pie are you going to outsource to this partner, and how am I going to make proper agreements that everybody's comfortable and I'm still in control, then I think you will lose the battle. I think actually you will just be too slow or too expensive or too inflexible to um, to meet the market demand. Yeah? And I think the whole med tech market, health tech market is a little bit behind on all the other industries with the adoption of technology, with the adoption of new business models, but the pressure is so high in that market due to different reasons that I think it will have to happen. And if you're not prepared for it, then it might hit you very hard. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think there is a pressure. There's a bit of a laggard philosophy in the medical device industry, and there needs some catching up to do. And I think the executives that can look forward and leverage Thaumatec expertise as an example will be ahead of the curve. And I think you provide, in some ways, it's a pressure cooker, and you're basically providing that release valve for different types of situations. And I think it's very comforting for a CEO to know that they can go to a company like a Thaumatec that knows what's ahead in the horizon. So as much as you provide services, you also provide almost a vision of the future, because you're so in touch with all the changes that are occurring now and that will come. In some ways, you're kind of a soothsayer in that you help advise and could advise companies of what to look at, what to be cognizant of. No, not knowing what you don't know, it's not a good idea. And I think you provide that clarity. So in addition to just all the things we've talked about, I think from a strategic perspective, Baron, because of your global perspective on the industry and all the things that people are butting their heads against, you definitely could provide a lot of insight into what needs to be thought about. Do you find yourself in a position of advising CEOs oftentimes in terms of looking forward to things they haven't even thought about before?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't want to be too pretentious, but the point is that you're right. If you look at geographically, yeah, we have Western Europe and the US where we're very active. So we know what in the different markets is happening. And definitely the speed is not the same because it's very regional, I would say, industry. Second of all, we work a lot with different startups. Yeah. So we know what is coming. This is also what we like. That's why we work for high innovative companies, being it, well-established companies that want to do, an upgrade or a new product, but especially also a lot of the startups. Working with Harvard Innovation Labs is just one of the examples. And yeah, we feel quite comfortable in sharing our experiences with what we see is coming. Yeah, the thing that is coming is, for instance, the whole integration of all these standalone, I would say, devices, applications, or algorithms or AI solutions for radiology. But there's, I think, 700 medically certified AI solutions. But how do you integrate them so a radiologist who is already, up to too much work, how can he integrate it in his workflow? Or how can you basically make sure that any of the remote patient monitoring devices are communicating with the hospital system correctly? So I think there's a lot of challenges that we see in the market, and that we're happy to share. And I'll give you one example as a proof for that. That actually today we had a kickoff with a big consortium that's EU funded with very, very big pharma names in there, and Thaumatec was selected as SME and top innovator to actually bring in that knowledge. Yeah, and I think that's a testimony to that we do know the innovative part of the med tech and the health tech solutions, and I can only see it's going very fast. There's a lot of challenges. But it's going very fast, and it's very exciting, I would say, what is coming. But I think, yeah, what we can share of our experiences, we will, of course. Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, wow, what a fun place to be in the world, and congratulations on the honor you received recently. That's really
Thank
awesome.
you.
So I guess for the US, what are your near term US goals for our audience out there?
So like I said, so we are in the we have four big hubs that we are focusing on, and I've been there all. I've been on trade missions. My last trade mission was to Minneapolis. I was very impressed with the ecosystem there, with Mayo Clinic and other regional hospitals working together with the ecosystem, making sure that the innovation is not just driven by one company, but also by the big ones, Boston Scientific, Medtronics, hospitals. And what we want to do is we don't want to compete with that people in the ecosystem. We really want to be an add-on. Yeah, so we know that a lot of the relationships that are in that ecosystem are super important to have that innovation. But we want to provide this add-on flexibility, expertise, input, so that the ecosystem can grow by itself faster. So we're not looking too much to compete in that. And that's why we're building our partnerships in these regions like the Boston region, Minneapolis region, Texas, and California, so that we partner with companies that are similar, maybe DNA than we are, but they also are looking for this extra expertise or capacity that we have to offer. So we tend to really think as, we want to have 40%, I think, within 2 years from our total business. We really believe that the innovation in the US is very exciting, very fast, a little bit faster maybe than in Europe. And I think we have a lot to add from our experiences because the challenges are still the same. There's a shortage of real tech talent, especially with experience in the MedTech, health tech area. Yeah, so that's what we're looking for, and that's our goal, to build these partnerships in these regions and to accelerate the innovation.
Well, that's amazing. So if you're a medical device company out there listening to this podcast, right, and you want to build a more dynamic, team of software engineers and be able to have a crystal ball in the future and be able to react dynamically to all the turbulence out there, and not just turbulence, but also just to enhance your company's ability to react and um, bring innovative products to the marketplace. You've got to reach out to Thaumatec. What's the best way for companies to reach out to you?
I mean, they can reach out to me directly to my email, barend.smet@thaumatec.com. And most of the intro calls with our new customers I do together with my CTO, because I think it's important to show also immediately, we are committed to building that relationship and understanding what you really want, so that we can really, for the next steps, provide you with the best context to say, okay, I think the next step is going to be this, and then we take it from there. But the first intros, I always like to do myself, because I, to be honest, I like to hear about all these innovative ideas that are around. It still amazes me how creative people are, but also how many good ideas are there that can really make an impact on people's lives. But I have a bottleneck in the realization. And I'll give you one example, a little bit the sidetrack, but the reason why I am in health tech, medtech, is also a personal reason. It's because my sister at 42 got diagnosed with Parkinson's, a terrible disease, and at certain moments the medicine, it don't reduce the tremors anymore. So then the only possibility was that she would have an operation with a device in her brain, connected via a wire to battery under her skin, and an app on a separate phone, where if she would have huge tremors, you would increase a little bit the current, and she would be completely stable. And if she goes now to some party, you wouldn't know she has Parkinson's. And this was the epiphany I would had when we just doing general software development, saying like, this technology, that's Internet of Things, that's what we can do. So why don't we focus all our energy, all our talent, and build code for that kind of solutions, instead of for some other industry, which is much more focused maybe only on money. So we have really a personal goal to bring these innovations to the market. And that's why I think it's exciting to connect with people in that branch, because I've noticed that almost everybody who is in the medical area, the health area, they all have this personal commitment that they want their product to succeed because it makes an impact on people, on people's health, on quality of life, business as well, but especially the first one. And I like that. I like working with people like that. So yeah, that's a long answer to who to contact, they can happily contact me, and then we'll take it from there. Looking forward to it.
Awesome, Barend. I have to say you're one of the most authentic individuals I have come across, and so it's been a pleasure having you on here. I'm sure we'll have more conversation, but thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you very much, and appreciate it for your time, and looking forward to catching up.
Sure.